Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over 5 more builds for our Scout class, and this is going to be following in the same way that we did our Gunner class not too long ago. So this will be 5 builds for 5 specific jobs, 1 for each type. The types of jobs we have are a fun build, which you can just kind of build however you'd like. This one's by far the most subjective. We have a single target build, so this is taking out big things like oppressors, Praetorians, or maybe functioning as your dreadnought killing build. We have a CC build. This is for crowd control, so adding status effects or just dealing lots of damage, lots of things to crowds. Makes it so that your team can weed them out a little bit quicker. An ammo build, so we can just have a bunch of bullets throughout the entirety of our mission. And then the last one is a general purpose build that is flexible and can kind of fit any of these roles, but doesn't necessarily specialize in one of them. So our very first one is the fun build, and we are taking the Hoverclock M1000 as our primary weapon. This makes it so that you can hover with the M1000 when you are in the air. This can be useful for stopping fall damage, as well as potentially getting to places that are a little bit more difficult to get to, or maybe waiting for Born Ready to kick in to get you a reload or your grappling hook to come up. It can be used in quite a few different ways, and it doesn't hinder the M1000 in any way, which is great because the M1000 already has great damage output on it, where you can one-shot grunts, at least if you hit them in the head, on any difficulty without any sort of mods. And if you take the armor breaking mod in tier 2, then you can one-shot body shot regular grunts on any difficulty too. And then for our secondary weapon, we are taking the jury-rigged boomstick with special powder. This lets you fly up into the air with the boomstick as long as you jump up in the air. It doesn't change the boomstick in any other way, which is very useful, so the boomstick can still work all the same. It works well against crowds of enemies and works pretty well against regular bugs for just picking them off. Both these builds are extremely flexible in the way that you want to build them, and Scout has a lot of very fun overclocks. These were just the 2 that I picked for this fun build. And this build definitely benefits more in big open areas and on big open maps. So on pipeline missions, on point extract missions, this build is going to work really well. On more enclosed missions, it's probably not going to work the best. In enclosed missions, then you don't really get a whole lot of value out of either of these, and it can be a little bit of a bummer because this is all about mobility. For a fun build, pick whatever the heck you find the most fun, whether that be something strong, whether that be something dumb, whether that be something in between. Strong and dumb also works. Whatever you want for your fun build. Our second build is going to be a single target damage build, and we are once again going to be using the M1000 Classic rifle as our primary weapon. We are going to be taking this with the supercooling chamber, which has been changed, so it's much better than it used to be. This can deal massive damage to big targets and can kill big targets super fast. It takes out oppressors, Praetorians, dreadnoughts very quickly, so long as you can hit them in the weak spot. There are some downsides with this overclock still. You lose out on ammo, so regular shots aren't as effective, but they're not as bad as they used to be, and you're just going to want it to use your superior mobility so that you can actually get to places where you can hit things in the weak spots. For a secondary weapon, you could go with even more damage if you would like. I was thinking about taking this with embedded detonators with the Zhukovs, or jumbo shells with the shotgun, or even trifork volley with the crossbow. All of those would have been really good options, but they don't function very well in combination with the supercooling chamber, and I kind of wanted the build to be a little bit more usable outside of just this one particular role at just killing big things really fast. Because if you wanted to, you could take any of those and kill big things really, really quick, but you would be really bad off in terms of ammo economy, and you'd have to either run through the mission really fast or make sure that you got enough resupplies so that you're not just running out of bullets throughout the mission. So instead of that, I decided to pair this with the gas recycling Zhukovs and max out their ammo more or less. This gives me decent crowd control with the Zhukovs and still really high damage, because if you pair this with an IFG, it's still going to do really high damage to basically anything you're shooting. And then the supercooling chamber for taking out those really big targets. That was kind of the thought process of this build. There are plenty of other options though. AI stability engine for the GK2 now does really high damage. You could also pick overclocked firing mechanism with the GK2 and have more burst damage that way, but also potentially run into ammo issues. You could also go with Bolts of Mercy, because basically any of Scout's secondaries worked with this, especially if you want to pair it with the IFG. And you could also go with the Drac Plasma Carbine if you wanted to go with Overtuned Particle Accelerator. That also does a lot of single target damage. And then for secondaries, like I said, jumbo shells with the boomstick, embedded detonators with the Zhukovs, or trifork volley with the crossbow all work really well for high single target damage as well. Then we move on to our third build, which is crowd control. And for a primary weapon, we are going to be taking impact deflection on the Drac. This one's great. It's really fun to take with plasma splash and just shoot this into crowds. This will clear up swarmers super fast, clears up grunts pretty quick. It doesn't clear up big things super fast, but it's not terrible against them. It should work just fine against basically everything. And then for a secondary, we are going to be taking the specialist with the crossbow. This kind of lets you have some flexibility in your build. I believe I took this with pheromone bolts when I was running it, but you could also take this with electricity bolts, or you could take this with the chemical explosive bolts, and I just pretty much maxed out the amount of special ammo that I could have with this. This still gives you some good single target damage with just the regular bolts from the crossbow, but it gives you a lot more crowd control thanks to your pheromone bolts or electricity bolts, or even the explosive chemical bolts to some extent. Any of your grenades work really well with this build too, because all of Scout's grenades have some level of crowd control. I guess if you want the most, pheromone grenades would probably be the most per throw, so that is an option, but the others are still really good too. For secondaries, basically anything with the Zukavs would be fine. Cryo minelets work really well against crowds. Gas recycling works pretty well against crowds if you want to take blow-through rounds with it. I guess embedded detonators wouldn't be the best because they are more single target damage. Boomstick has a couple options, like compact ammo would work fine for that. And then another option for the Drac that you could have would be something like aggressive venting. That also works really well against crowds and gets you back a lot of ammo. So there's a couple builds for Scout for crowd control, not as much as there is for like Driller or Gunner, but still a decent amount of them. Then we move on to our fourth build, which is the ammo build. And this one goes to Rewire mod with the Drac as our primary weapon. This is just the most amount of ammo that you can have on a weapon. It is kind of crazy. Rewire mod technically cuts down on your overall ammo, but that doesn't really matter because every time that you overheat your gun, it's refunding ammo back to you. So you just constantly want to be overheating this and then getting that ammo back, and it takes you a very long time to run through ammo with the Drac. For a secondary weapon, I decided to take bodkin points with the crossbow because this is also pretty ammo efficient. You could also pick something like Specialist because it gets you more ammo too, and either fire bolts or ice bolts would also help with this because they can have potential AoE effects that can work on multiple enemies, and they can also synergize pretty well with teammates' gear, so that's pretty nice. But bodkin points works really well for clearing up crowds. It can work okay against big single targets. You do want to take damage for this one, but aside from that, you can kind of build it however you'd like. And the other weapons don't really have something that comes close to Rewire mod for the overall ammo. You could go with basically anything for the GK2 since most things don't really affect its ammo. You could go with Hipster with the M1000, which is a fantastic overclock, but I talk about it a lot, so I wanted to kind of keep it off of this list because it's really good, but I kind of wanted to shine a light on some of the other things that, well, Scout has going for it. You could also pick aggressive venting with the Drac. That one's quite ammo efficient as well, or impact deflection, since you can potentially get more value out of it. For secondary weapons, of course, you could pick compact shells for the shotgun, and for the Zukovs, you can pick basically anything, I guess, besides embedded detonators, because that kind of cuts down on your ammo, but everything else works pretty well, where you do have a lot of shots with it. And then our fifth and final build is going to be a general purpose build, and for this, I decided to take the GK2 with AI Stability Engine. AI Stability Engine is really awesome right now in this season since it got buffed. It gives you high single target damage, gives you long range, and just gives you not a whole lot of downsides really. The downsides are pretty minimal, especially since you can stack rate of fire on it now, so that's really nice. And then for a secondary, we're taking compact shells for the shotgun, and then I just decided to go with extra ammo for it so we could have something like 52 shells in the gun in total. Makes it so you can use this pretty leniently against everything. The shotgun does work quite well at close range. You could switch this out for a number of other options though too. Again, basically anything for the Zukovs will work, besides maybe embedded detonators, which cuts down on your ammo, but you do get more single target damage. This build doesn't necessarily need that, but the other options are quite good. And you could also go with things like bodkin points, Specialist, fire or ice bolts on the crossbow, or quick fire. Any of them would work just fine as well. So here was 5 builds for the Scout. Hopefully they kind of helped you out. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Driller and Inji. I don't know which one first, but one of those two because we haven't talked about them yet. That should be a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye!